$2,500 years ago, Aristotle writes the Poetics, which is his analysis of tragedy. But tragedy, by tragedy he meant really drama. So this is kind of a theory of how drama works. And it's quite simple, actually. It's very simple. Every story has three parts. And the terms that Aristotle came up with to describe these three parts, very, very clever terms. Beginning, middle, end. The story begins in the beginning, in the world of the story. That's where we meet the characters, you know, the hero and all the other characters, these archetypes that we just met, right? That's where we meet them all and we get a sense of who they are. And it's where we start to understand a little bit about their world. So if we were going to do a story about you, for example, we might set it at the campus of Vanderbilt University, Nashville, Tennessee. And we might set it in, we might have scenes in your classrooms, in your dorm, and if you join the sorority there, or if you work for the newspaper there, or if you play basketball there, or whatever it is that you do. That's the world of the story. In the beginning of every great story, we have to understand who the characters are, a little bit about their motivations, a little bit about their self-identity, a little bit about what they want to do, so that we can then go about following them on this great journey. The beginning of the story, what I call the world of the story, this part one, ends with some kind of crisis or call, okay? Crisis or some kind of call to action, right? Where the hero is forced, usually beyond his or her, own choice. They are forced to somehow take on a struggle, right? And it could be that a hurricane rips through your town and your town has been devastated, houses have been ripped up, schools have been ripped up, people are huddled in churches and sports arenas, just struggling to survive, and it could be that that's the crisis that your hero rises up to deal with. It could be that your mom and dad just got divorced, and you had thought that this was a happy, complete, intact, whole family, and now you realize that it's split irretrievably into two. And that creates a crisis that just rocks your world and turns everything upside down. And this happy little place, this normal, established series of set routines and roles and so forth, is now just smashed open. So that's a crisis that shakes everything that you've been used to. Your identity, your role, your place in the community, your sense of what you are on earth to do. Now, how do most of us respond when we have a crisis? When someone suggests that we are an addict, or when someone suggests that this relationship just isn't working, or when someone suggests that you just don't have it to make it in sports or theater or whatever. How do we usually respond? We don't tend to just kind of say, oh, what, you're right. I guess mom and dad, you haven't been getting along, and we all need to kind of move on, and mom, you need to develop yourself, and dad, mom's been holding you back, and we kids, we're going to be better off anyway, shuttling between two households. That'll turn out good for us, and so yeah, I could go with this. Yeah, cool. So one of my mom's house, one of my dad's house. Usually doesn't go like that. Usually there's intense denial and resistance. Characters, the heroes, let's say, only deal with that crisis in stages. You might deal with a little part of it at first, like if your parents announce that they're going to split up, you deny it. Mom and dad come together. You have all kinds of conspiracies to get them together. See, mom, dad really likes you. See, dad, mom really likes you. That kind of thing. But you acknowledge a little bit of it. Maybe you go along with it because, well, dad lets me have ice cream more often, so, there is something to be gained from this whole arrangement. And so you buy into a little bit of it, but not the whole thing. And you hope that you can stave off the major parts of this crisis by biting off a piece of it and hoping the rest of the problems go away. But of course, it doesn't happen like that. The crisis gets more intense. This is the intensity of action here. And over time, crises develop and conflicts develop. They get more and more intense over time. And over time, you finally deal with the problem at its most basic core level. That's when you have a moment of recognition where you say, you know what? Mom and Dad ain't never going to get back together again. And you know, maybe it's okay. And maybe it's not what I wanted, but at some point you have to accept. So you reverse your previous identity or your previous approach to life, and you take on a whole new identity. And then you move into the denouement, which is kind of the wrapping up of the story, right? The stories tend to have this basic structure. It's the 1, 2, 3 structure. The world of the story, who is everybody, what do they do? The second part of the story, the rising action, what are the crises and how do they deal with them at higher levels of intensity and more wholly over the course of the story. And then the denouement, or the resolution, how do people kind of fit themselves into the new world of the story. You know, there's the old status quo and then you have a new status quo. And so everything is transformed. Stories are about change. Everything in storytelling is about change. And so everybody has to be different here than they are here, or else there's no point in telling the story. It's like giving them a snapshot and asking them to look at the same snapshot over and over again and to be interested. You can't do it. It has to always be about change. And so everybody is different here. People have a new identity, a new understanding of the world, a new level of maturity, hopefully, and a new way of operating in the world. Now let me tell you about this study. It's the diary study. There were some psychologists who took a group like you, a bunch of college students. I think they did like 3 or 4 dozen college students. And they said, I want you to keep a diary every day. And I don't care what you write. You can write about sports, boyfriends and girlfriends, classes, family, drinking, parties, fraternities, sororities, whatever you want to talk about. We don't care. And we don't care what form you put it in, put whatever form you want. It could just be little notes, or it could be something more than that. Okay. So these students kept these diaries over 8 months of the school year. And in fact, the diary entries had no real form. It was just like, you know, I got drunk at a party last Saturday and I crashed at so-and-so's house. Or I worked really hard on an English paper and I thought I was going to get an A and I got a B minus, and I confronted the professor and she said, sorry, you need to work on this, this, and this. Or I talked to my mom and dad and they're going to France and I wish I could go with them. Oh well, I'm stuck here in Nashville, right? Could be any number of things like that. So the actual diary entries took no form. But at the end of the year, they said, okay, now we want you to summarize these diary entries, however you want. We're not going to impose any kind of form on you. Now what they could have done, you're the one who likes lists, right? Yeah. What they could have done is done a list, like times I was upset with Fred, or times I struggled with school assignments, or times my mom and dad and I got together for lunch, or times this or times that. Could be any, the summaries could take any form. But the form that they always took, the form that they invariably took, was this. We humans need to put ideas into a narrative form. And the form that we tend to use is this arc, where we show some certain state at the beginning, a certain state of being at the beginning, and then rising, ever more intense, ever more important challenges, and then settling into a new world. Okay? And so that's what stories are all about. But what I want to suggest is that everything in writing is the same exact form. Everything. Everything is a narrative arc. Sentences operate exactly like this. Paragraphs operate exactly like this. Chapters, sections, reports, emails, tweets, everything ultimately, if we think of them as this kind of narrative structure, then we're going to write well. And I'm going to give you some really cool tricks for doing that, which will save you countless hours and make your writing a whole lot better. Give you much more control over your writing, which is ultimately what it's all about.